Greetings, greetings. This is Body-Culinary, and I'm sending you all some warm, positive vibrations. So, I know it's getting chilly out, so I just came to put some sun on my skin. So, today, I just wanted to check in and just share some inner reasoning on your inner environment and your body chemistry, right? So, let me just a quick reminder, if you find value in this channel, feel free to subscribe and share anything that's valuable that you find value in with someone that could perhaps use some motivation or some inspiration. On this channel, you will find my journey, some sharings of my journey with very fine Afro-textured hair, inspiration to cultivate a personal movement practice, inspiration to consume for longevity, for vitality, that's primarily around plants, whole, fresh, and unprocessed, no labels necessary. Yeah, and self-care, right? Self-care as a way and means to improving our esteem. So that's what I'm sharing here on this channel. So if you're interested in any of those things, feel free to subscribe to the channel. So today, I was just reasoning on your inner environment, right, and your body chemistry. Now, it's someone that has realized from a young age, from a very young age, that the things that I'm consuming and that my family was consuming had a direct, powerful impact on our health and our lack of health and vitality. And I grew up with a very colorful, expressive family, right? Caribbean and Afro folks in the Americas, right? African American. And so speak loud, a lot of times tell a lot of jokes, got a Caribbean sense of humor, Southern sense of humor. You know, the Southern side does or doesn't, like to get hot on each other. Very, very expressive. On the other side, often I think many folks, and I don't think it's limited to Afro folks, can be very challenged in our communication skills, right, and communicating harmoniously. When it comes to partying and singing and dancing and just celebrate, we're very celebratory folks, and we love to dance and we love to play. But a lot of trauma, as all humans go through, but a lot of trauma has rendered the muscle of communication quite often lacking. So quite often in perhaps not having been heard as children and as young adults, we can often be rushing to get what we have to say out for fear that we may not get another chance to express, or perhaps there's a fear or anxiety around not being heard or not being able to express ourselves, or maybe being oppressed or feeling repressed, right? So a lot of times that can show up in us talking over each other. I know that's something I constantly have to be mindful of because it's such a rush to get everything out and to express, right? There's an anxiety around and an urgency around expressing. And I think sometimes we're moving so fast we don't notice and dial into how this anxiety has us feeling. We can definitely say, I know I can definitely say, that a lot of anxiety plays out subconsciously and shows up in our consumption patterns, our eating, and all kinds of mindless activity that is very habitual and definitely takes its toll on our mental, physical, and emotional well-being. So as someone that has worked in the holistic health field for many years, classically trained as a chef, and have worked for many years as a professional personal fitness trainer, so much emphasis is given to our external, right? Definitely, I can say that someone that's had a lot of acne, right? We put so much emphasis on the visual aesthetic, and that's great. Human beings, we're attracted to symmetry and things that look attractive. But quite often, we're not really dialing into the root of a lot of our behaviors. So interesting to note, scientifically, when we're under lots of stress and anxiety, we secrete certain hormones in the body, right? Through all of the different glands that are inside the body. Like for one would be the thyroid gland, right? That secretes synthroid, and we have the liver, and we have the spleen. We have all these organs that secrete hormones. The hormones are very powerful chemicals produced in the body. So they're chemicals that are produced in the body, and also we intake chemicals, even if they're natural substances, through food, and also if we're eating things that are processed and synthetic. So we have this whole chemistry going on inside the body, and when we're under extreme amounts of stress, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical stress, or from stress from over distending our bodies with too much food or too many toxic substances masquerading as food, we create a whole chemical environment that has some very distinct effects on our well-being. For example, having the fight or flight hormones, right? We secrete, many of us may know now, we secrete a lot of cortisol, right? And that can contribute to gaining a lot of adipose or fatty tissue in around the midsection, which is a precursor for diabetes and high blood pressure. Also, this is very interesting. In the presence of stress hormones, right? We hear about cholesterol all the time. We may think of cholesterol as coming from animal foods, but also the body produces its own cholesterol. And one of the functions of cholesterol is the acids, there are acids that are secreted, right, inside of our body as a part of the stress hormone, right, a stress hormone release. And it can be very acidic inside of the arteries. So the body can secrete cholesterol or cholesterol-like plaque as a response to stress, and this can also clog up the arteries. Isn't that amazing? That we have a physiological response to stress that can contribute to clogging up our arteries. So I share this to perhaps encourage folks to, and also a reminder also to myself, that we can be eating all of these healthy foods, even whole living unprocessed foods, and if we don't take, without making ourselves wrong, however our life is 110% our responsibility, if we don't really dial in and acknowledge the fact that our relationships, if they're really, really toxic, can really take a really dramatic toll on our health, chemically, physiologically. If we feel our stomach is all knotted up, under stress, and this can be stress not just from the job or not just from fear of viruses and pandemics and worldwide disasters, but a big source of this is how we are reacting when we're triggered. Triggers right now are a fact of life. A lot of the television programming is triggering. A lot of us may be in relationships with folks where we're just habitually triggering each other. Trauma, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not intentionally. This has a dramatic effect on our bodies chemically, right? So we may not think of it, but I think even intuitively we can recognize, and I don't know to what degree this is acknowledged by the medical establishment, but it's almost like we're causing cancerous effects, I would say, or the feeling, if we look energetically, that we're creating all these deleterious, all these really caustic effects by how we are responding to the triggers. And that is easy to say, and it could be even valid, that we can't do anything about politics, and some people may not be able to leave their relationships or the relationships with family. The relationships are just a family that you have, whether that's your spouse or your siblings or your partner or maybe even perhaps your coworkers. Maybe just can't realistically, leave, So how do we educate ourselves to and actually retrain ourselves, right? Because a lot of our habits are ingrained. How can we retrain ourselves? Or perhaps something to contemplate in your quiet moments. How do you retrain yourself to be more responsive to the triggers, right? The triggers are not going to go away because we have a fantastic conversation, right? But hopefully this can maybe just put on our radar, this communication. And maybe just perhaps ask your divine intelligence, how can I remove myself from the dance of being triggered, right? Usually these triggering relationships we have with certain people, it's like a dance that has been going on for a long time. You know, you may not be able to get rid of your children or your spouse or certain relationships, but how do we remove ourselves from the dance of being triggered? One of the things I can say that I found is that education, a basic comprehensive education, has been so instrumental and helpful to me in grounding in a lot of my decisions around my consumption. For example, knowing that cholesterol, the body makes its own cholesterol, and it is being secreted in a response inside the body. Part of it is being, part of the reasoning for it being building up to a point where you can create plaque in the arteries is as a physical response to stress. So just that piece of education, wow. So I'm stressed out and I'm feeling all nervous and anxious inside, and my body is actually having a response where I'm creating plaque. The body's creating plaque in the arteries as a response to stress. Just that piece of information is enough to pull my coat for me to be more mindful. And even if I don't know everything to do at that moment, once something is on my radar, and I ask the question, well, how can I remove myself from this dance, or at least mitigate or minimize my reaction and transform it to more of transmute it to more of a response and a proactive, positive, healthy, practical response to stress and triggers, right? This is often a big reason, root reason why many of us are eating to the point of deformity mindlessly, where we're actually distending our guts and our organs, right? When the stomach is not very big at all. Because quite often, many of us are under a lot of stress, and it does take some effort to be aware, right? Quite often during the day, we go in and out of consciousness, right? And when I say that, not meaning to sound esoteric, ants, but being very mindful and then going into subconscious, habitual behaviors where there's not even a thought process. We're just doing things like automatically. That's most of the day. That's a lot of the human species. So beating up on ourselves, not really effective. Usually when you feel bad, you're going to have to do something to make yourself feel better. And subconsciously, that often will be soothing ourselves or medicating or self-medicating with substances, people, shopping, sex, etc. Is this making sense? Hopefully this is helpful. So, our inner environment, what can we do? What if you're in a busy city? We may not have access to a garden. Some of the things that I've done over the years is to be very particular about and very intentional about creating an environment. That's having been in a very small apartment in the States. Being very mindful about clutter in the space, which I know for me, generates a lot of anxiety. Too much old stuff or clutter. Feels like I'm suffocating. So creating as much as I can an environment where there are beautiful natural scents, not chemicals. Chemicals can create a lot of anxiety. Making sure I beautify my space with plants. Also balancing out my space, the sounds and the scents in my space, the lyrics that I hear when I come into my house. My home is my sanctuary, right? Even if it's a small place, you're paying rent or you're paying mortgage, you got to go in there, at some point. But creating a space that feels very relaxing. Also balancing that out with, Prospect Park is one of my favorite parks on the planet. We pay tax dollars quite often for some of these public spaces that we're not really using. My son had put me on to some areas of the Botanic Garden that I didn't even know about. You know, my son took me on a bike ride. I mean, it was quite a trek, like all day. I was thinking, I want to go home eventually, but he was so gracious, and because I'm always sharing with him, so he was like, let me share something with you. So he took me through Prospect Park, and I think he must have shown me about 6 little waterfalls in there. Oh my gosh. Right down the street from me. And these are things we pay our tax dollars for that we're not using, you know. So finding bodies of water where we can hear the sound of water. I know nature, the sounds of nature, very relaxing to me. Very, very relaxing. So balancing out, creating a space, a safe space, a relaxing space in your kitchen so you're enticed to want to go in there, right? Your food prep area. Creating that in your bathroom, right? Your healing space where you go to cleanse yourself, and in the area where you go and rest. Instead of buying more things, that might mean getting rid of some stuff so you can feel like you can breathe and your space feels really airy, right? Going to parks, it might mean sitting on your fire escape and putting some plants, you know, out there, and soft light and the sounds and the scents. I'm big on champa and essential oils, all in an effort to create an environment, and using the outer environment to help us stimulate and cultivate what I call like cultivate a craving for quiet from the inside. So quite often looking at the food, and the food is great, but it's only one piece in the puzzle, all right, of creating health, right? So I often contemplate that, or just reason that sometimes we paying a lot of money to folks with, it's kind of like a conflict of interest, and this is just one woman's perspective, not necessarily the truth, but we pay to medicate a lot of things that ideally would be taken care of in our relationships with our parents or our close relationships. But everybody's so triggered and traumatized, quite often it doesn't seem that we're able to hold space for each other. So ultimately, it's our responsibility, right? Our life is our responsibility. How can we hold space for ourselves? That could mean looking at our environment. Does it relax us, you know, when we enter into the house? Or do you feel like you're really nurtured and calmed before you enter into the streets outside, right? Do you feel like you have a armor, like you were just plugged into a battery pack of, you had good food and you were really rested and relaxed in your own home, and so now you set yourself up where you're fortified enough to be able to respond when you step outside of your door, right? Those responses to anxiety and stress is a big factor, a big determining factor in how the mentality that we are in when we are consuming. So food is huge in our toolbox, but it is not the only thing. So as my mentor used to say, go to parks and rest your eyes on green. Rest your eyes on green. And I have to say, there's really something to say for plants, right? And the wind and the rain. I know it sounds poetic. To some, it may even sound corny. But these things can really help us create an inner environment, right? And it affects our bodies chemically. We have a whole chemistry. Your whole gut flora may be thrown off from stress. You know, our intestines are even considered the first brain. Isn't that interesting? So all of those things, our gut and our gut intuition, there's a reason for these different sayings. So all that to say, invite you to perhaps slow down just a little bit and ask yourself your own divine, is that a little bird? Oh, it sure is, wow. Ask your own divine intelligence about your body chemistry and your environment. How does your environment feel? Your home, or wherever it is that you reside, and also the home, this vehicle that we're moving around in every day, all the time. Are we able to maintain some kind of quiet in our inner environment? as we're moving out around the world. That is really something that to be purposefully cultivated, right? So inviting you all to create a great day on purpose because you said so. In spite of everything that's going on, right? Because we will all lay down this coat called body. That's a fact. No labels necessary, whether you eat animal flesh or whether you eat fruits and vegetables, whatever the tone of your skin. We shall all, old and young, lay down these coats that we call the body. And so what kind of experience do you want to have while you're here? There's lots of stuff that's happening outside and to us that's valid. But is it even possible for us to cultivate another kind of strength where we can be more intentionally and purposefully responsive rather than reactive? And ask yourself in your quiet moments, how are my responses and my reactions affecting my body chemistry? Do you even think it affects your body chemistry? All right, y'all, this is Body Culinary. I will see you all soon. Create a great day.